It's on now. Black lives are under attack. What do we do? When black lives are under attack, what do we do? When black lives are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back.
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 My name is Dawn O'Neill. I am with Us Protecting Us. I'm with Alliance for Black Lives. I am wherever black people struggle against oppression. We're out here today making connections to state violence. We've made the connection with the monuments. We've made connections in the indigenous fight. And now we are here in front of the courthouse making more connections. What does state violence look like, right? State violence looks like when you are having a mental episode, when you are having a crisis, don't call police if you're black. That's our reality. That's what the reality looks like to us in this country. Anthony Hill was a veteran. He served his time in Afghanistan. He served 2 tours in Afghanistan. And he came back to this country. He was living with PTSD. And if you don't know the story, Anthony took off his clothes because that's one of the things that you do. You get overheated when you're having these episodes. You get overheated. And so Anthony took off his clothes. And he went outside. And from what they said, he was crawling on the ground, doing maneuvers on the ground. When witnesses inside of the office saw him, and they called for help. They called 911 for help. And they thought, because we live in the United States of America, that if they called 911, that help would arrive. And so one of our founding members, Bridget Anderson, who was also Anthony's fiance of Us Protecting Us, she's one of our founding members. She started Us Protecting Us with the dream that first responders will not be police officers in a mental health crisis. And that's what we've been pushing for, because what we found out is that 1/3 to 1/2 of the people that are killed by police in this country are living with some type of mental or just disability. For instance, Ken, who's over here, my brother Ken, who's in Us Protecting Us, if a police officer came up to him and said, hey, go over there, and Ken is blind, he can't see, Tim could be shot and killed. Because what we found out is that these cops don't de-escalate, they escalate. Or so if there was a person who was living with hearing disabilities, like my brother Dre, and he didn't hear the cops' instructions, he could be shot and killed. So on this particular day, March 31st, I believe it was 2015, 4 years, March 9th? 2015, Anthony took off his clothes. It's been a long fight, y'all. I'm sorry. I was out here since day one. It's been 4 years.
That's all right.
And Anthony took off his clothes, and he was doing these maneuvers. They called for help. Robert Olsen shows up on the scene. Robert Olsen does not, he has on him a gun. He has pepper spray. He has a baton. He has a car that he can just get into if he's that afraid, right? Because he feared for his life, right? So if you're in fear of your life, I don't think you would stand out there and, you know, confront what you're fearing. You could get back in your car and you could shut the door. But he saw a black man, a naked black man. Within, how many minutes was he on the scene? 7 minutes on the scene? 7 seconds. Saw Anthony Hill, pulled out his revolver, shot and killed Anthony like he was a dog in the street. Because black people can't be suffering in this country, right? Black people can't be having mental episodes in this country, right? Black people can't be victims or victims of state violence. Well, Anthony Hill was a victim of state violence. Within 7 seconds, Robert Olsen shot into Anthony Hill's chest, killing him. Instead of using the least lethal force, I guess you could say, minimal force, he didn't decide to tase him. He didn't decide to beat him with the baton, which they usually do sometimes, you know. Right, hit him with the spray. He decided to shoot him and kill him like he was a rabid dog, twice. And then we gathered out here 4 years ago trying to get an indictment, and we slept out in the cold right over here under these trees for 3 nights. We slept. It's 0 degrees temperatures. Members of Rise Up, Black Lives Matter, united in a united effort to get an indictment on this cop 4 years ago. If you or I shot someone, I don't think they let us walk around for 4 years. But yeah, we stood out here in the freezing cold, night after night, pushing for an indictment, which we got. It was a win. Today, we were hit with the reality of being black once again in America. State violence. Anytime that a white officer gets off for killing black children in this country, which seems to be the norm now, we'll be out here to say our lives matter. Black lives still matter. And we'll still continue to fight this fight. Join us, join an organization if you're not with an organization. We ask that you come out, us protecting us. We fight to get mental health response. I'm sorry, y'all, I'm messed up today. We're trying to get a mental health crisis unit in DeKalb County, which DeKalb County has funding for. Yeah, we found that out. They get money. It's just not being implemented. And so us protecting us is trying not to get police to be the first on the scene in a mental health crisis. And I ask that you come out and you join us. We have meetings the first Saturday of every month. Get with one of the members, Paul, me, Kendall, Bridget. Get with the Alliance for Black Lives, out here fighting for change. There's other organizations out here fighting for change. I see my brother Jamoke out here. Thank you. And that's it for me, y'all. Usually I give y'all something. I don't have it today. I'm sorry. I don't have it today. All I can tell you is we got to keep continuing to fight against state violence, police brutality. Love you.
Last year, there was a case very similar to Anthony Hill's that happened in Johns Creek. And there's a staff attorney here with the Council on American Islamic Relations who's going to talk about that case and the similarities.
Thank you for that. Good evening, everyone. I'm a staff attorney. My name is Murtaza Khwaja. I'm the staff attorney and lobbyist with CARE Georgia. CARE is our nation's largest Muslim civil rights group. And we can't talk about civil rights without talking about the biggest ill that this world has ever seen, which is white supremacy. And the biggest victim, unquestionably, of white supremacy in this country has been black males and black women. From our very inception, from the slave trade to the Civil War to Reconstruction to Jim Crow, 60, 70 years ago, a black man or woman couldn't vote in this state. We still see the lines. You go across Ponce, you see Briarcliff turn to Boulevard, or Moreland, sorry, and you see Monroe turn to Boulevard, you see what this post-segregation South is supposed to look like. And that's something that doesn't work. I want to talk about the case we had last year, but I also want to talk about how proud we are to be here for Anthony as a solemn partner with our community and a solemn partner for everyone who speaks out against injustice and speaks up for civil rights and speaks out against state violence. And I want to be clear about this. State violence isn't just police brutality. When they cut funding from our schools, that's state violence. When they take away access to healthcare, that's state violence. When they close our polling stations, that's state violence. State violence has taken many forms, and it's taken many lives, it's taken many dreams, but we're here to say we're going to speak out against it. We may not end it today, but we're going to fight against it, and we're going to fight together. Last year, I was at, the similarities of this case were really just astound me. I was at a friend's at the time. I got a call, urgent call about this case in Johns Creek. So I go over to I hear there's a shooting. I go there immediately, and I speak with the family of the victim in the case. The victim, her name was Shoukri Saeed. She was in her 30s. She's an American citizen. She had come here initially from Somalia back in 91, 92, spent her entire life pretty much in the States, studied here, had US citizenship, and suffered from mental health. She's not the only one. Everyone has mental health, but a lot of people suffer from mental health disabilities and mental health illnesses. This is something separate from the issue of white supremacy. Mental health is its own issue, where we know people here aren't getting the help they need. But those who are at particular risk for this are people of color. And this is what we saw with Ms. Shoukri Saeed. So Ms. Shoukri Saeed lived with her sister. She was an aunt to 3 of her nieces and nephews. They lived with her in her house. She took care of them. She was close with them. She was a functioning member of society. She wasn't just someone with mental disease, which is how the media painted her. She laughed. She had dreams. She was a person who cared for her community and who served her community, just as I know Anthony Hill was as well. She had an episode. When she had this episode, she'd never been violent before. She had a knife in her hand. Her family had moved from California. And when I say knife, people think a huge, butcher's knife. No, it was a small kitchen knife. It was a knife. We've seen the knife. It's a knife that you cut fruit with. She had a knife in her hand. She didn't threaten anyone with the knife, but she could cause herself harm, and her sister was worried. So her sister called the only people she knew who to call. She called the police. She called the people who are said to make our communities safe and said to protect our communities. But in reality, we know what these people do. We know what the system has them do. So within 20 minutes, the police are on their way. Shoukri had another sister who lived about 5 minutes away. That sister was coming over to help. And she sees the police officer following Shoukri, and her sister gestures towards her sister. That's my sister, she's who needs help. That was the last time she saw her sister alive. Within 6 minutes, 5 police officers arrived at the scene. Within 2 minutes of them engaging her, Shoukri was shot 7 times by 5 police officers. Shoukri was killed in cold blood. Shoukri was murdered in cold blood. You can't tell me that 6 police officers or 5 police officers couldn't subdue a 5'1", 5'2", 120-pound woman by themselves. You can't tell me they couldn't take her down. You can't tell me that the kitchen knife was a danger to them. Just like you can't tell me that the officer who murdered Anthony Hill was in fear for their life. In law, we have a practice. There are 2 different tests. There's objectivity, there's subjectivity. An objective, for whatever means, is meant to be that. It's meant to be objective. But subjective is where the issue comes. And the people who get the most latitude and the people who are given the most discretion are police officers. The people who are given the least amount of discretion, the people given the least amount of any type of leniency are people of color. And this is what we saw. Shoukri's case is being investigated. It's continued to be investigated by the Fulton County DA's office. And like all these cases, anytime one is investigated, it's like they're all being investigated because we know what happens. It's a routine pattern. The investigation happens, indictment may happen, but what happens at trial? What we saw today, it's a sham. What goes behind closed doors? This isn't justice. This is not a justice system. It's clear that this justice system, it's not broken. It's working how it's supposed to work.
That's right.
It's intended to work like this.
That's right.
It's intended to criminalize and dehumanize people of color. This justice system isn't for us, and it's up to us to say this justice system won't work for us. And it's up to say that as a community, we are not going to live by this justice system. Justice isn't what happens in this building. The land we're standing on is stolen land from indigenous people. This building is built on the backs of slave labor. The laws are written by racist old white men, interpreted by other racist old white men, and continue to be perpetuated by younger racist white men. This is something that I will fight for, and I know everyone will continue to fight against. The struggle against white supremacy, the struggle to fight for the people who lost their lives, whether it be the indigenous people of this land, people who lost their lives coming over on the slave trade, those who were enslaved here in America for hundreds of years, those who continue to be enslaved in the form of criminal incarceration. We need to push for justice that is rehabilitative. We need to push for justice that serves our community, that protects our community. That's not what the police does. There's a dearth, there's a lack of understanding, and there's a lack of ability and accountability in our police force and in our governance. Together we can fight against it. Together I know we will be able to overcome it. So please, I want to thank all the groups here. Please join some of these groups if you're not already members. Join your Black Lives Matter move. Come volunteer with CARE. Come volunteer with Project South. Volunteer with groups that are here fighting against this type of mass incarceration, that are fighting for people of color, that are fighting for justice. Join them. Join us in our fight. And continue to be a part of the community that will be one of justice. Thank you.
Testing, testing. Hello, everyone. My name is Dre. I'm with Alliance for Black Lives. I'm a former of a Black Lives Matter of Atlanta co-founder. I'm mad as hell, y'all. I deserve to be mad in this country. My brother was killed butt-ass naked, and he did not receive justice today. I'm mad, and y'all should be mad too. Yeah, that's right. I'm not playing with the DeKalb County courthouse. I'm not playing with the judge. If she don't do the right thing, November the 1st, we will vote her out. She got to go. She got to go. Robert Olsen should be locked up in jail today. She gave him an $80,000 bond. She said that Robert Olsen received not guilty, so she don't feel like he was a threat to the society. When you kill a butt-naked man, you are a threat to this country and to our society. As a black man, I am disabled. I have PTSD. I fear for my life every day when I leave out of my house. Because if I can't hear the police and he said, get out your car and point a gun to my head, and I'm like, what you saying, what you saying? I will be shot down. I'm mad, y'all. I'm mad. I'm hurt. Y'all bear with me, y'all, because I've been fighting for 4 years for Anthony Hill. We shut down the highway. We camped out in the cold in front of this courthouse. We did everything to bring justice for Anthony Hill. And I see my black brothers and sisters are murdered in this country. We had a black sister in Fort Worth, Texas, was gunned down in her house playing a video game with her nephew. The police not locked up in jail. He resigned today, but he should be behind the bars because if Pookie or Tookie kill a white man, he will be locked up the same day and charged the next day for murder and get life in prison.
Even if he don't kill him, he gonna be locked up. That's right. You right.
And we got this president in the White House is a white national white supremacy. He must go. We got to vote these bad politicians out of office, and you guys run for office so we can change laws, so we can have justice in this country. Because we're not getting justice right now. My black ancestors are crying in their grave because our people are being murdered every day in this country. Every day I turn the news, I see a black young brother being killed by the police. And then the police said, I fear for my life. How you gonna fear for your life and the brother doesn't have a weapon on him? You drive in your car, you get your tail light off. They put guns to our head. We see this every day in this country. It should be thousands of people out in front of this court right now, demanding justice in this country. Because if we don't get no justice in this country, we will shut down this country and we will vote them out and we will do economic boycott in this country. I am mad as hell, and you should be mad too with me. Thank you. Power to the people! Power to the people! Power to the people! Thank you.
So, for the last 12 days, we've been demanding justice in this courthouse for Anthony Hill. I'm Attorney Gerald Griggs of Georgia NAACP, and today was a bittersweet day. We saw guilty verdicts, but not the top guilty verdict, because there's no excuse for murdering African-American service veteran who was in mental health crisis who happened to be naked. And I feel everybody's pain. I feel where Dre is coming from. I feel where the family's coming from. But as an officer of the court, it's a shame that we have murder trials in this courthouse every single day. And I've yet to see a defendant go home after being convicted of shooting somebody. Let me say that again. Robert Olsen was convicted of aggravated assault, which is the shooting of Anthony Hill. Robert Olsen was convicted of lying about shooting Anthony Hill, and Robert Olsen was convicted of violating his oath of office. He is a convicted felon. And convicted felons in DeKalb County generally are sentenced the same day. They are not granted appeal bonds and allowed to go home. So I think what the activists are saying, and I know what our civil rights organizations are saying, and I know what the oldest civil rights organization is saying, and that's this. On November the 1st, there should be a sentence of prison time. 35 years. This is not Dallas. It's not Fort Worth. This is Atlanta, Georgia, DeKalb County to be precise. One of the darkest counties in Georgia. I love how we talk about people of color, and I love my people of color, but today we're talking about black folks. We had an unarmed black man that was gunned down in Chamblee, Georgia. Somebody that served this country, fought on foreign lands, and then came home to be shot in cold blood by a public servant. So again, we sat out here for 12 days, 6 days waiting for a verdict. We got to speak to the jurors, and we respectfully disagree with the first 2 counts verdict. But with regard to the other 4, we are expecting a sentence that sends a message. And that message is clear. In DeKalb County, when you murder an unarmed citizen that's naked, that's not a threat, you get the max. I want to thank our elected district attorney for having the courage and the temerity to charge him with murder. I hear a lot of conversation in the press about, oh, it should have been a manslaughter charge. No, this man was unarmed, naked, and his last words were, oh, the police are my friends, they will help me. That was his last words, and those words should haunt you. They should haunt every citizen of DeKalb County. And what I'm asking for on behalf of the association is this. On November the 1st at 9 o'clock, I want all of DeKalb County at this courthouse sending a message. Because not only are we the citizens, but we're voters. And we're watching this trial. There have been people who stood out all night for an indictment. There have been people who were here every single day of the trial, outside and inside. There was a family that drove from Moncks Corner, South Carolina, expecting justice. And so on November the 1st, in the words of a great jurist that happens to be in this building, this is a court of law, not a court of mercy. So if we don't give mercy to Pookie and Ray Ray, we're not going to give mercy to Robert Olsen. He can enjoy his bed tonight and for the next few weeks. But come November the 1st, it's time to send a swift message to the nation. Yes, sir. I've seen an officer get a life sentence in Fulton County. It's time to see an officer get a life sentence in DeKalb County. 35 years is what we are demanding, nothing less. And if 35 years don't happen, we're going to have a real problem. So I'm sending you a message from the Georgia State Conference. I'm sending you a message from the Atlanta NAACP. But more importantly, I'm sending you a message as a native of DeKalb County. Justice will apply equally, regardless of a badge and a gun. Because in Georgia, it's still illegal to take a life when there was no perceivable threat. So my hat's off to these activists. My hat's off to the lawyers that litigated this case. And I hopefully can take my hat off to the judge when she sentences to 35 years, because the community is watching. Thank you.